I'm not going to pay 65. I'm only going to pay 35 or 40 because you got to build that into your risk. You know, that I don't know what I'm getting. You know, I don't know what the inside looks like. You're going to base it on what you see on the outside. And, you know, if you can talk to that person. Are they a tenant? Are they an owner occupancy? You know, did they have a shotgun when they opened the door? You know, I mean, you know, do you smell the house before you see it? You know, I mean, that you know, there's some, are the pipes there? Is the air conditioner there? Copper
Plus they
thieves.
have the right to stay there for 90 days before they get out.
That's
So
right. Once you
it's a
take
long
it,
time.
you know, about half of them are still in possession. So what do you have to do now? You got to get possession, you know, and you got to send them a letter, and you got to knock on the door. And look, I am a nice guy and Christian guy and all that stuff, but I just don't have that speech. You know, I own your house, get out. You know, I don't have it. You know, I mean, you are compassionate, and this is where really it is true. I mean, these people are hurting all across the country, and it's not just the deadbeats and the bums, and I mean, it's your neighbor. You know, it's your doctor. You know, it's your the realtors, I mean, the realtors, the builders, the lenders. I mean, you know, this economy has affected everybody. So you are people, and now you have to deal with whatever that situation is, and this is where the cash for keys comes in, right? You know, here's some money. You know, and in Alabama, the right of redemption is a big thing. You know, you need to move. I need you out of my house. Here's $1,000. Assign me your right to redeem and get out. You know, and so cash for keys. Now, what I don't like is that's a courtesy on our part. I can't talk a whole lot of politics, and I might get in trouble. But the cash for keys it's almost an entitlement that I had them tell me. Well, you have to pay me. You know, because Fannie Mae and Freddie has a cash for keys program, and they know it. And I'm like, wait, you know, I don't have to pay you anything. I own your house. You know, so but there is this entitlement mentality of that comes across of, you know, that you owe them something to get out of their house. They don't owe you anything. You know, you gotta get them out. So back to competition. I have very few people that can do this. Cash, risk, even fewer want to mess with this, and they'll tell me, John, if it's occupied, I don't want it. So in essence, now we can get better deals because you know you're going to take that risk, but you know you got to be able to deal with all of it. You got to have an attorney that can do this. You need an attorney that can file your ejectment action. Those of your landlords, and I don't know, this is it's the same. It's an ejectment action, not an eviction action. Those are two different courts. You know, it's district in Alabama. It's circuit court versus district court. Okay, don't make the mistake. If you file in the wrong court, it's the wrong. So it's two different actions. And that's a road you don't want to go down. Again,
because they were never you never had an agreement with them to live in the house.
that's right. So
Is it faster or
you have to get personal.
slower?
You have to get personal service. Okay, which is if they're still there, then normally you're going to find them there. But the worst case scenario is if they leave their stuff there. They leave husband and wife or whatever happens, and now you got this house full of stuff and nobody's there. You got to find that person. And until you get personal service, you cannot file your ejectment action. So you got to be a private investigator, and so the process can get drug out. You know, I mean, it can take 30, 60, 90, 6 months. I mean, they are entitled to a trial by jury if they take it far enough. So there's a huge risk, but that doesn't generally happen. I mean, it's one of those things where the risk is there, but most of the time, this is the day of judgment. As long as the biggest mistake is leasing it back to them. Well, look, I just need this time. Let me lease it back to you. Particularly if you want to use it for a rental and you think that's a good idea. That's a bad idea because this is the day of reckoning. The day of reckoning. They knew it was coming. I don't care what they tell you about. My husband was getting, whatever the situation, or they know. The lender does not foreclose without doing everything they can to collect. They are knocking on the door, harassing them at work, calling them on the phone. These people know that it's being foreclosed on. So you have to make sure that you don't allow them, because if you allow them to stay past that day of reckoning, then a lot of times that can be a problem. Tenants, okay? This is Obama changed the law, which this is a good thing. You had all these homeowners or vendors lien deeds or all these people that the owners aren't paying the mortgage. They're paying the lease, or even worse, they're buying the house on a vendor's lien subject to another mortgage. this mortgage doesn't get paid, these people are out of luck. So what do? You know, that's a real situation. So if they can produce a document, it's a 12-month lease, you have to honor that lease. Even though you hadn't seen it, you don't know what it is, you still have to honor that lease because so the lease does survive the foreclosure sale. That's now it has to be at market value rent. In other words, it can't be I'm renting it to my sister's, brother's, cousin's, uncle, whatever. You know, I'm not, you know, at half a market rent. If you can prove that it's market rent and they have to pay you, that doesn't happen. I mean, you know, they don't have to hardly ever pay you. Then you can inject what you are. But the best case, if you're running that, get them to sign a new lease with you. You mentioned it sounds like you've been down that road before. If you can get them to sign a new lease with you, then you can evict on that lease. You know, versus having to try to evict on a lease you don't have. But they have to produce that lease. If they can't produce an in-writing lease, then you do not have to honor it. It can't be just their word. No title insurance. This is another big one. Funders in the room. This is why our hard money and all these other deals, where are you going to get money from? When you have to stroke a check and you get a deed that comes back with no title insurance. And there's not any lender in their right mind that's going to fund that deal for you, you know, because there is no title insurance associated with that deed. So you, as essence, you got to have the funds available from some other source or a way to, you know, get it funded. Now you can get title insurance at, you know, 24, 48 hours. You can get it right after the sale, but at the sale, when you actually have to have the funds, there is no title insurance policy being presented, and that creates a huge problem when it comes to where you're going to get money from. Again, why do I need Travis? That's part of that deal. You know, you got to have somebody that's willing to take that risk with you, and you are searching the title to make sure the number one thing is that you're in first position. You know, everything else can be cleared up. The chasing down the cemetery. I mean, I had to go to the cemetery to verify these people were dead. The whole husband and wife, and I mean, I had to do that. I mean, you know, it's it's crazy. But all those things, what happens is, all the things your title company's doing for you on your titles, title companies, man, they have to do a lot, right, that you don't see behind the scenes. Well, you have no title insurance person to do that for you. You have to do that. So, again, risk associated with no title insurance. Must have online records due to the pace. Right of redemption, 0. We already talked about that. Let's talk about, I think I talked about bonds here. Did I talk about bonds? Maybe not. You can get a bond. Your lender, the right of redemption, because somebody can redeem it, you got to get a bond to cover that gap. If you bought it for 30, that becomes the strike price. That becomes a redemption price. You sell it for 70, you got to buy a bond to cover that gap between those two prices. So just know about that. Again, that's a big deal in Alabama. Not so much in other places. You know, all of this has to happen, I mean, just now. You know, I mean, you know, you get the price. Sometimes you don't get the price until I'm on the steps. You know, so you're out there and you get the price. So, you know, you got to be able to, you know, do your homework, do your due diligence, make all that happen, and get all that going. So the big question is, how can you do it? And the short answer is, you can't, okay? You want to go, you know, how do I do this? You can't. You've got to have a team in place. You just do. You cannot do it. Even on the reality show, right? You got one guy on the step bidding, you got one guy on the, that's what's got to happen here. You got to gather all this information, and like for me, I can be all those different roles, and I have been. You know, I've been the guy jumping through the window. I've been the guy, you know, the gathering the records. I've been the realtor. I've been all those, and I can be all those real, but you can't be all those things all at once right now at one time. So if you really want to do this, you got to get a team in place. Who's on your team? You got to produce the list. We talked judicial versus non-judicial. I kind of went over this a little bit earlier. So you got to start here. You know, where am I going to get my list from? How easy is it going to be to get it? Do I have to pay for it? How much it is? So you got to get your list from, you know. Look, cutting, I can remember back to high school, college, I mean, this is, you know, cutting with a little X-Acto knife and cutting the legal notice, you know, black stuff all over my, you know, hands, and cutting them and sticking them to the tax record, you know, old dot matrix printer. My kids don't even know what that is. So, So now that you got your list, okay, you got to be identify the deal, and this is, we talked about this a little bit earlier, not your normal everyday realtor. You know, you got to have somebody that knows what they're talking about, is investing in the realtor. And look, a lot of these properties are listed for sale, and it's not uncommon for it to be listed for $100,000, and they're trying to sell it for the owner, and you got to bid a $50,000. You call that listing agent, and they're going to say, oh, you know, that house is worth, and they're trying to justify the fact that they got that listing, and they don't understand what you're talking about, and then they got, you know, who do they represent? Who are you? What? You know, and they got this whole thing that they can't get around. So the listing agent can be very helpful if you build a relationship with them. I have a relationship. By the time, it's bad now, because I am a regular realtor every once in a while. I hate it, actually, but you know, I do. I mean, put somebody in my car. Look, I get paid today. I mean, you know, I get a deal, I get paid today, driving a realtor. But when I call to show a house, I get which one of my listings is in foreclosure now. You know, I mean, you know, that kind of deal. Because the listing agent may not even know that it's in foreclosure. So they can be helpful, but just you have to take their opinion with a grain of salt as to what they're really telling you and be able to verify it. So you got to have that person. That person's got to be able to tell you what the retail value is, what we can sell for ARV after rehab, actual retail value, what the cost of the rehab is. All right, get that. The cost of the rehab from the window of your car. You know, how do you do that? And the wholesale price. Again, what will an investor pay for it today? And and only cash sale. So this is that person on your team. All right, your retail expert. Your retail expert may or may not be the same person. You know, it's kind of funny, you know, this deal, Travis and I, we got properties listed, and I have properties that we own listed with another realtor, with another company, because I just said I have 3 girls. They are my prior. I don't work nights and weekends. Although my 4-year-old had her first little thing tonight, and she sent me a video of her little performance that I missed. That's okay. But I do. My kids are first, and I don't spend nights and weekends and all that stuff. So you got to have a realtor, a retail realtor. When you're first starting off, you can combine some of these. It may be all that. If you don't get rid of these deals, they'll kill you. You know, when you're trying to flip, vandalism. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's everywhere. Copper thieves. I mean, y'all have copper thieves out here? I mean, copper thieves. They knock the holes in the wall, and they start at the bottom, rip the wire all the way to the top. You know, for a $10 piece of wire, and the air conditionings, and the copper pipes, and all that stuff. So those are all issues that you do not want to hold your inventory. I'm his buddy. Hard money lenders that knock your head off with, not this lady, but they got all that money is, when you literally, I mean, some of these lenders, and I don't, some of them are charging, outrageous points, and 14, 15, 16% interest, what interest don't, whatever. I mean, whether it's whatever that interest rate is, you got to get it going. So we got to have a rehab contractor. Did I skip?
What about insurance on these?
All right. Insurance, yeah. Particularly where we live, hurricane, hurricane zone, what is south of I-10, which runs right along the coast. Insurance premiums are, way up. Yes, you do have to get insurance, whether it's a builder's risk, depending on condition. So yeah, because again, you're actually going to fund it before you got insurance on it. So you got to be able to make sure you can call that agent up. That's another person on your team. Look, I bought a house today. I haven't seen it yet, but I bought it. So he's like, what? But you have to be able to have that insurance person. Rehab contractor, somebody, we all know that, quality, affordable, efficient, 2 out of 3 at least. If you're holding a property manager. Property managers are huge. If you got to have somebody that's going to manage this thing for you. I mean, earlier today, he was talking about, if you hadn't had a bad experience with property manager, property managers, if you've been in this a long time, property managers can really kill your deal too. So you got to have a good qualified property manager. Management. Day of sale inspector. You gotta have, I can't be on the steps bidding and out checking to see if it's vacant. Did I get in? So you gotta have that person. How are they gonna compare? Estimate of rehab. List management. Okay, now you got this list. I told you about postpone, cancel, all that's gotta happen. And so this is you can tell that, this is a job, right? This is a job that you got to go through. when they postpone, the difference in postpone and cancel, postpone means we simply don't want it back today. We've got a promise to pay,